The frost made the wire sing when I touched it that morning, 5 a.m. November cold that burned your lungs, and the cattle were already bawling for feed. Been checking fence at dawn for 40 years. The routine steadies a man. By noon, the house smelled like roasting turkey. Carol had set the table for 4. Our boy Danny drove up from Billings with his Aunt Rita. We said grace. Carol served the plates. "I'm going to Vegas tomorrow," she said, not asking, announcing. "Girls' trip, 7 days." As I set down my fork. "We should talk about this first." Her eyes went flat. "I don't need your permission, Franklin." Loud enough, the words hung in the air like smoke. "You don't own me." Danny looked at his plate. Rita's hand froze on her glass. I folded my napkin, placed it beside my plate, looked at my wife of 32 years, then "Don't come back." She grabbed her purse and left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. The purse contents had spilled on the table: lipstick, wallet, and a business card. Hargrove Development, LLC. I said nothing, just noted it. Rita's whisper cut the silence. "Franklin, she didn't mean—" "Yes, she did." The morning after Thanksgiving, I fed the cattle alone. The trough ice had to be broken with a sledgehammer. The sound carried across empty pasture, metal on ice, the kind of sharp crack that makes your teeth hurt. My breath came in white clouds. The diesel truck had coughed 3 times before starting. Carol's car was gone from the drive. Dishes still sat on the table from yesterday. Cold turkey, congealed gravy. I worked through the feeding routine. 200 head needed hay. The work steadied my hands, even when my mind wouldn't settle. By 7, Cal Turner's truck came up the road. He'd been my foreman 40 years. Since before his hair went gray, he climbed out slow, studied the house. "Mrs. okay?" "She's gone." Cal nodded once, didn't ask where or why. Just pulled his gloves on and helped me fork hay off the truck bed. The cattle pushed and jostled, their bodies giving off steam in the cold air, manure and wet hide, and that particular smell of animals that trust you to keep them alive. Through winter, we worked an hour without talking. That's how men handle things sometimes. You work until the silence says what needs saying. Loading the last bale, Cal straightened. "Saw her at the county land office last month." He didn't look at me, just watched the cattle. "Meeting with some fellow in a suit. Thought you knew." The hay bale in my hands weighed 60 pounds. I set it down careful. "What kind of fellow?" Couldn't say, but he was carrying one of them folders. Property assessments, look like. Cal pulled off his gloves, slapped them against his thigh. She see me, turned away quick, the way people do when they're caught. I didn't answer, just climbed in my truck and drove back to the house. The mail came at 11. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table for 3 hours. Coffee gone cold, staring at that business card. Hargrove Development, LLC. A Billings address, a phone number I didn't recognize. The mailbox held the usual: feed store bill, utility notice, and a thick envelope from First Agricultural Bank. I opened it standing in the driveway, wind cut through my jacket. Somewhere a hinge was squeaking, the gate by the equipment shed. Needed oil. Been meaning to fix it since September. The letterhead showed my name, Franklin Porter. Agricultural operating loan refinance notice. $400,000 at 12% interest. Due date, March 31st. My hands went numb, and it wasn't from the cold. The signature at the bottom looked like mine. Same slant to the F, same loop on the P, but it wasn't. I'd signed my name 10,000 times. I knew the weight of it, the muscle memory of pen on paper. This was close, but it wasn't mine. A second page. Cosigner authorization, Carol Porter. I walked back inside. The answering machine was blinking. Red light pulsing twice. I hit play. "Mr. Porter, this is Denise from First Agricultural. We need to confirm the cosigner authorization on your refinance. Please call us at your earliest convenience to verify the terms and payment schedule. Again, this is regarding your $400,000 operating loan, due March 31st. Thank you." The machine beeped. The house settled around me, those small sounds of wood and foundation. A structure built in 1923 that had seen 3 generations of Porters. I picked up the phone, dialed the bank, waited through 3 rings. "First Agricultural, this is Denise. And this is Franklin Porter. You left a message about a loan refinance." Papers rustled on her end. "Yes, Mr. Porter. We just need verbal confirmation that you authorized your wife as cosigner on the operating loan refinance completed in June, 6 months ago, when I'd been down at the livestock auction in Miles City for 3 days. I didn't sign any refinance." A pause. "Sir, I'm looking at your signature right here." "Ma'am, I'm telling you I didn't sign anything. And I sure as hell didn't authorize my wife to sign anything." Another pause, longer. "Porter, your wife came in on June 14th. She had power of attorney papers and your signature authorization. She co-signed a $400,000 refinance of your existing operating loan. Are you saying you weren't aware of this?" Through the window, I could see the barn where my grandfather hung tools in 1889, the same barn, the same land. 135 years of Porter ground. My wife co-signed a $400,000 loan 6 months ago, and I'm just hearing about it now. Sir, the papers were sent to your mailing address. Both of you were copied. I looked at the envelope. Postmarked today, not June. When's this loan due? March 31st. That's the balloon payment date for the full amount. 4 months. I had 4 months before the bank could foreclose on 135 years. And if I can't pay, her voice went careful, professional. The property would go to auction, Mr. Porter. Standard foreclosure procedure. I thanked her and hung up. Sat in the kitchen that smelled like yesterday's turkey and this morning's cold coffee. The business card lay on the table. Hargrove Development, LLC. My wife had been planning this since June. The Cottonwood Diner sits on Main Street, same spot since 1947. I'd been eating breakfast there every Saturday morning for 40 years. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee. Nora McKenzie's owned it 30 years, since her husband died and left her needing income. I walked in at 7:30. The bell over the door rang. Every conversation stopped. Tom Hendricks at the counter. The Paulson brothers in their usual booth. Rita Schmidt and her church group by the window. All of them turned. All of them looked. Then looked away fast, the way people do when they've been talking about you. The diner smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. And that particular pine sol smell Nora used on the floors every morning. The grill hissed behind the counter. Nora came over with the pot, poured my cup without asking. Her hand shook slightly. She was 61, had known me since high school, had served me coffee 3,000 times. She didn't say good morning. I sat, drank. The coffee was too hot, and I didn't care. Behind me, the whispers started again, not loud. Just that rustling sound of people passing judgment in low voices. Heard she left Thanksgiving Day. Always seemed cold to me. Probably drove her away. Living out there. Tom Hendricks cleared his throat. Morning, Franklin. Tom. That was it. That was all. The man I'd loaned a truck to when his broke down. The man whose daughter I'd helped pull out of a ditch in a snowstorm. He turned back to his eggs. Rita Schmidt got up, came over. Carol's older sister, 63, with that same tight mouth Carol had been wearing lately. Franklin. She stood too close. We need to talk about Carol. She called me. She's upset. I kept my eyes on the coffee. That's so. She says you told her not to come back. That you threatened her. Now I looked up. I didn't threaten anybody. I told her if she walked out on Thanksgiving, she shouldn't come back. She walked out. 'Cause you're impossible to live with. Her voice rose. People were definitely listening now. 32 years she put up with your silence. Your coldness. That godforsaken ranch in the middle of nowhere. You never took her anywhere. Never talked to her. You drove her away, Franklin. The coffee cup was warm against my palms. Ceramic. Real ceramic, not foam. Nora didn't believe in foam cups. She tell you she forged my signature on a $400,000 loan? Rita's face went red. That's a lie. Carol would never. Banks got her signature as co-signer. Got mine too. Except I didn't sign it. June 14th, while I was in Miles City. I took another sip. She tell you about that? Rita opened her mouth, closed it. You're trying to make her look bad because you can't admit you failed her. She walked out. The door slammed. The bell jangled harsh. Nobody looked at me now. They all found their plates very interesting. I finished my coffee, left money on the counter. Nora took it without meeting my eyes. The cold hit hard when I stepped outside. My truck was the only one with frost still on the windshield. Everybody else had warmed theirs up, been here longer, watching for me maybe. I scraped ice off the glass. The scraper made that squeaking sound against frozen glass. My breath hung in the air. When I got home, there was a silver Lexus in my driveway. The man leaning against it wore a suit that cost more than 3 of my cattle. 52, maybe? Gym tan. Hair too perfect for wind like this. He straightened when I parked, smiled like we were old friends. Franklin Porter? He extended his hand. Vince Hargrove. Hargrove Development. I didn't shake. Just stood there with the wind cutting through my coat. His smile tightened. I heard about your separation. I'm sorry. These things are never easy. You here to offer condolences or something else? He laughed. That practice laugh men learn at expensive schools. I admire directness. Okay, I'm here to make you an offer. $1.8 million, cash, 30-day close. For what? Your property, all 240 acres. He pulled out folded papers from his coat. I've done the assessments. Fair market value is closer to 1.6, but I'm prepared to go higher. Clean sale, you walk away with money, no complications. The fence line ran behind him. My grandfather's fence posts, set in 1889, some of them still standing. Not for sale. Mr. Porter, think about your situation. Your wife's filing for divorce. She'll get half. The judge will force a sale to split assets. You'll end up with $900,000 after legal fees, maybe less. I'm offering you a clean exit. How do you know about the divorce? He smiled. Carol's been consulting with me. Property valuations. Future development potential. He gestured toward the creek running through the south pasture. That creek access alone is worth millions to the right buyer. Mineral rights, water rights. You're sitting on a gold mine and running cattle on it. My hands made fists in my coat pockets. You've been talking to my wife. For about 6 months. She's a smart woman. Sees the value in what you're treating like any other ranch. He stepped closer. Cologne. Expensive cologne that didn't belong in wind, that smelled like cattle and diesel. Franklin, the bank forecloses March 31st. You know that. I know that. Carol knows that. When that happens, I'll buy it at auction for half what I'm offering now. Take the deal. Get off my land. His smile died. You'll change your mind. They always do. He walked to his car, stopped. Oh, I had my surveyor do some preliminary work. Hope you don't mind. He drove off. I walked the fence line toward the creek. Found them in 10 minutes. Survey stakes, bright orange flags. 12 of them, scattered across my property. Marking boundaries, plotting development. Someone had been walking my land, measuring it, planning what to do with it once it wasn't mine. Carol had given him access, given him permission. While I was feeding cattle and fixing fence, she'd been selling us out. The wind carried the sound of the creek running, still flowing, not frozen yet, maybe another week before ice took it. I pulled up every stake, snapped them, threw them in the bed of my truck. When I got back to the house, the red light on the answering machine was blinking. Carol's voice. Franklin, we need to talk. My lawyer says you're being unreasonable. Call me. I deleted it, unplugged the machine. The business card sat on the kitchen table. Hargrove Development, LLC. Behind it, the loan papers. $400,000, due March 31st. 4 months until they took everything my grandfather built. I found Cal in the barn the next morning. He was oiling the hay elevator, that old green monster from 1975 that still ran if you treated it right. The smell of machine oil and old hay filled the space. Cold December light came through the wraps in the boards. He looked up when I walked in. Didn't stop working. Got something for you, he said. From behind a toolbox, he pulled out a manila folder, the kind with the metal clasp, worn edges. It looked like it had been handled plenty. He set it on the workbench between us. Been keeping this since summer. Figured you'd need it when the time came. I opened it. Photographs, 8x10 prints. The first showed Carol and Vince Hargrove at the Silver Spoon Cafe in town. They were leaning close across the table. Her hand was on his arm. The date stamp said July 23rd. The next photo, Carol and Vince at the county land office. August 12th, she was signing papers. He was watching. Another. Vince's Lexus parked behind my equipment shed. Carol walking toward it. September 5th, I'd been at the cattle auction that day. Thought she was in town shopping. 4 more photos. Different dates. Different locations. Always the same 2 people. My throat went tight. Where'd you get these? Took 'em. Cal wiped his hands on a rag. Saw him at the cafe that day in July. Didn't like how it looked, so I started watching. Followed her a few times when you were away. He looked uncomfortable. Didn't want to say nothing without proof. Figured a man needs more than gossip when his wife's stepping out. I flipped through them again. July through October, 5 months of meetings. 5 months while I'd been working this ranch, trusting her with the books, believing we were partners in this life. There's receipts too, Cal said. Hotel and Billings. September 23rd. Both their names on the room. The paper was a credit card receipt. Room 412. One night, $180. I set it down. My hands were shaking. Thank you, Cal. There's more. And he shifted his weight. She met with a lawyer, county courthouse. I got a buddy works maintenance there. Says he saw her filing papers. Quitclaim deed papers. Trying to sign over the property? Trying. Got denied. Clerk told her she needed your signature or a court order. This was November 15th, week before Thanksgiving. Cal's jaw worked. She's been planning this a while, Franklin. The barn was cold, but I felt colder. The kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads. One more thing, Cal said. Your grandfather, when you turned 18, he took me and Jim Holcomb to the bank, made us witnesses on some documents, legal papers. He said something about the ranch staying porter no matter what. You remember that? I did, vaguely. I'd been 18, more interested in pretty girls than paperwork. Granddad had been 74, already sick with what would kill him 2 years later. Safe deposit box? Think so. He made a point of it. Said it was important. Said if anything ever happened, you'd need to know where those papers were. Cal looked at me steady. Might be time to find out what he was protecting. I called Richard Chen that afternoon. He'd handled my business contracts for 15 years. Real estate closings, lease agreements, the kind of law that dealt with land and cattle, not marriages falling apart. Franklin, his voice came through careful, professional. I heard about Carol. I'm sorry. Need a lawyer, Richard. Not for sympathy. What do you need? I told him about the loan, the forged signature, the photos, Vince Hargrove's offer, the quitclaim deed attempt. He was quiet for a long time. I could hear him typing. His office always smelled like leather and old books. I'd been there enough to know. Franklin, signature forgery is fraud. If we can prove it, that loan's void. But we'll need a handwriting analyst. Court proceedings. Time. I've got until March 31st. And that's tight. But the quitclaim attempt works in your favor. Shows intent to defraud. Shows she was trying to transfer property without your consent. More typing. I can file an injunction. Block any property transactions until we sort this out. Also, file for a temporary restraining order preventing either of you from selling or transferring assets. How fast? Emergency filing. I can have it to the judge by Monday. You'll have protection by Tuesday. Something in my chest loosened. Not much, but enough to breathe. Do it. Franklin, one thing. Richard's voice changed. Got that tone lawyers use when the news isn't good. If Carol files for divorce and claims 50% ownership, a judge could still force the sale to split assets, marital property. Doesn't matter if the refinance was fraud. If she can prove she has ownership stake in the ranch, the court can order it sold so you both get your share. The relief died fast. Even if she committed fraud? Fraud on the loan, yes. But if you've been married 32 years and she can show she contributed to the property's value, bookkeeping, maintaining the home, anything, she's got a claim. Montana's not a community property state, but judges have discretion. And, Franklin, she was your wife for 3 decades. No prenup, she's got standing. But through my window, I could see the fence line, the barn, the fields running to the horizon. So, even if I prove the loan fraud, I still lose the ranch. Not necessarily. But you need to prove she doesn't have ownership claim. Was the property in your name only? Any trusts, any legal protections your grandfather set up? I thought about what Cal said. The safe deposit box. The papers Granddad made him witness. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Find out fast, Franklin, because if there's no legal protection and she files for divorce, you're looking at a forced sale. He paused. I'll get you breathing room, but breathing room isn't the same as winning. I hung up, stared at the folder Cal had given me. Photos of my wife with another man, receipts, evidence of 5 months of betrayal. But evidence of betrayal wasn't the same as evidence of ownership. If Carol could prove the ranch was half hers, she could take it. And I had 4 months to prove it wasn't. The blizzard hit on January 23rd. Weather Service called it a 100-year storm. Wind out of the north at 60 miles per hour. Temperature dropped to 18 below. Snow so thick you couldn't see 10 feet. I was alone when it started. Cal had left at noon, said the sky looked wrong. He was right. Power went out at 6 p.m. The house went dark and silent. No hum of the refrigerator. No furnace clicking on. Just wind screaming around the eaves and snow driving horizontal past the windows. I had the wood stove. Had lanterns. Had enough food for a week if I rationed. The cattle didn't. I went out at midnight to check them. The wind hit like a fist. Snow in my eyes, my mouth, down my collar. The barn was 60 yards from the house. Took me 10 minutes to reach it. The cold burned in my lungs. Inside, the cattle were pressed together for warmth. Steam rose from their bodies. They were terrified. I could see it in their eyes, that animal panic when they know something's wrong, but can't understand what. I broke ice off the water trough with a sledgehammer. Fed them extra hay, checked the propane heaters. They'd last maybe 6 hours before running out. When I stepped back outside, the wind nearly took me off my feet. I spent that night in the barn. Couldn't risk the walk back. Fed the wood stove in the tack room. Listened to the wind tear at the roof. The radio crackled with static and emergency alerts. Highway 200 closed. Interstate shut down. Wind chills at 40 below. By morning, 3 cattle were down, young heifers. They'd gotten separated from the herd somehow, trapped in the corner of the pasture. The cold took them fast. I found them frozen. Their eyes were open. Snow had drifted over their bodies. Smooth white mounds that looked peaceful until you knew what was underneath. I dug them out with a shovel. The ground was frozen solid. Took me 4 hours to clear enough snow to reach them. My hands went numb even in gloves. My face felt like leather pulled tight over bone. By the second day, I had lost 9 more. The propane ran out. The heaters died. I couldn't keep the barn warm enough. The cattle huddled together, but it wasn't enough. The old ones and the sick ones couldn't fight the cold. I dragged the bodies to the equipment shed. Pulled them across snow with chains in the tractor. The tractor barely started. Diesel doesn't like 18 below. Each body was 1,200 pounds of dead weight. Each one represented 8 months of feed, of care, of hoping they'd make it to spring. By the third day, the wind had stopped, but the cold hadn't. The radio said a Chinook was coming. Warm winds out of the west. Temperatures would hit 40 by week's end. Too late for the 12 head I'd lost. I sat in the house that night, wrapped in blankets by the wood stove. The radio played low, country station out of Billings. Some song about love gone wrong and whiskey making it right. Carol's voice came on the wind. I heard it clear as day. That's how I knew I was in trouble. When you start hearing ghosts, you're not doing well. She was saying my name. Franklin, Franklin, over and over, the way she used to say it when we were young, before the ranch ate all our words. I wondered if I should just let the bank take it. Let Vince Hargrove have his development. Let Carol have whatever money was left. Walk away and find somewhere warm, where cattle didn't freeze and wives didn't forge signatures. I was 67 years old. I'd spent 49 years on this land. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it was time to surrender. The radio cut to weather. Chinook wines expected late February. Early thaw coming. Spring might arrive ahead of schedule this year. I thought about my grandfather. 1889. He'd walked here from the railroad, built a house with his hands, raised cattle through winters that killed men. He didn't quit. He held. I fed the wood stove. Drank water from melted snow, waited for morning. Carol came back on February 27th. I was in the barn when I heard the vehicles. Multiple engines. I walked outside and saw 3 trucks in my driveway. Carol's sedan, a white F-150 I didn't recognize, and the sheriff's Tahoe. My stomach dropped. They got out together. Carol looked thin, sharp. She wore a coat I'd never seen, too expensive for ranch life. Behind her came a man in a suit, 50 maybe, briefcase in hand, and Sheriff Tom Hendricks, looking uncomfortable. Franklin Porter? The suit stepped forward. I'm Mitchell Crane, representing Carol Porter in her divorce proceedings. I have a court order. He handed me papers. The wind tried to take them. I held tight. Temporary emergency protective order. Carol Porter, petitioner. Franklin Porter, respondent. Petitioner claims fear of harm. Petitioner claims 50% ownership of marital property. Court orders respondent to vacate premises for 24 hours while petitioner retrieves personal belongings. I looked at Carol. She wouldn't meet my eyes. You're having me removed from my own land? Crane's voice was smooth. Professional. It's temporary, Mr. Porter. 24 hours. Mrs. Porter has a legal right to access her property, and she's expressed concern for her safety. I never threatened her. She has the right to feel safe. He gestured to the sheriff. Tom, please escort Mr. Porter off the property. Tom Hendricks looked miserable. We'd gone to school together. His daughter had worked summers on this ranch. Franklin, I'm sorry. It's a court order. I have to enforce it. Behind them, I saw movement at the Cottonwood Diner. People pressed against the windows, watching. The whole town was about to see Franklin Porter escorted off his own land by the sheriff. I looked at Carol. Finally, she looked back. You should have just signed when you had the chance, she said. Quiet, just for me. Now I take it all. I got in my truck. Tom followed me to the property line, watched while I drove onto the county road. In my rearview mirror, Carol was already walking into the house. Mitchell Crane beside her. And through the trees, I saw another vehicle pulling up, a silver Lexus. Vince Hargrove had been waiting for me to leave. Crane had mentioned his name on the way out. Something about pre-approval. Something about Hargrove Development's financing arrangement for Mrs. Porter's compensation after the sale. They'd been planning this together. The loan, the foreclosure. The development, my wife and her boyfriend were going to take my ranch and turn it into condos. And I had 24 hours to figure out how to stop them. I spent that night at the Wagon Wheel Motel on Highway 200. $28 for a room that smelled like cigarettes and bleach. The heater rattled. The mattress sagged. Through the wall, someone's television played too loud. I sat on the bed with a box I'd grabbed from the house before Tom escorted me out, just a cardboard file box from the closet. Things Carol had packed away years ago when she was organizing. Inside were letters, old ones, yellow paper, my handwriting from 1971. Carol's handwriting from when it was still round and hopeful. Dear Franklin, I can't wait to be your wife. 3 more months, I'm already planning where we'll put the furniture in that little house. Love forever, Carol. I read through them. 20, 30 letters from when we were young, when the ranch was an adventure instead of a prison. When silence between us meant contentment, not distance. I found one I'd written her after Danny was born. You gave me a son and a reason. I'll work this land until I'm dust. I'll make sure he has something solid when we're gone. Love you more than words. Franklin. The rain started outside, not snow anymore. February thaw. The Chinook winds had arrived like the radio promised. Water dripped from the eaves. The parking lot turned to mud and slush. At the bottom of the box, underneath the old letters, I found something else. An envelope, sealed, my name on the front in Carol's handwriting. But the paper was newer, the ink was fresh. I opened it. Franklin, I'm writing this because I need to remember why I'm doing this. You'll never see this letter. I'll hide it where you won't look. But I need to write it down so I don't lose my nerve. I've talked to Vince. He says once his development project finalizes, I can finally have the life I deserve. A real house. A city. People who actually talk. You gave me silence. And cattle. And 60 below winters. Vince gives me hope. The lawyer says, with Montana law, I can force the sale. 50% is mine. I've earned it. 30 years of earning it. I'm just waiting for the right time. Waiting for you to give me an excuse. Then I'm gone. And I'm taking my half. See, the date was April 2019. 4 years ago. She'd been planning this for 4 years. Waiting. Watching. Looking for the moment when I'd give her reason to pull the trigger. Thanksgiving. You don't own me. I'd given her the excuse she needed. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, pressed it flat against my knee. My wife hadn't fallen out of love with me recently. She'd been biding her time for years. And Vince Hargrove had been in the picture at least since 2019, maybe longer. The television through the wall went quiet. The rain kept drumming on the roof. That steady sound of water on tin, the kind that usually helps you sleep. I didn't sleep. Morning came gray and wet. I drove to Richard Chin's office at 8 a.m. He was already there, coffee in hand, looking at papers spread across his desk. I got your restraining order lifted, he said when I walked in. Judge reviewed it. No evidence of threat. Carol can't keep you off your own property. You can go home this afternoon. She'll try something else. Probably. Richard gestured to a chair. I sat. His office smelled like old books and that particular coffee smell of a pot that's been brewing too long. Franklin, I've been thinking. We could fight this in court. Take months. Cost you $50,000 in legal fees. Maybe more. Or we go another way. Community mediation. Grange Hall, public forum. You present your evidence, she presents hers. Let the town decide who's telling the truth. Town's already decided. Half of them think I drove her away. Half of them. Not all. Richard leaned back in his chair. Small towns run on reputation, Franklin. Court runs on law. Sometimes reputation matters more. You get people to see the evidence. The fraud, the affair, the premeditation. They'll remember. And their judgment sticks. I thought about it. The Grange Hall. Same place we'd held town meetings for 40 years. Same place my grandfather had argued for better roads back in 1952. When? 2 weeks. Gives us time to prepare, gives her time to lawyer up, makes it official. He pulled out a legal pad. But Franklin, we still have a problem. Even if everyone believes you, even if Carol's exposed as a fraud, if she can prove 50% ownership, a judge can force the sale. We need documents. We need proof that ranch isn't joint marital property. My grandfather set something up. Legal papers. Cal Turner witnessed them when I turned 18. Where are they? Safe deposit box, I think. Haven't thought about it in 49 years. And Richard stood up fast. Then we find it. Today. Because if those papers prove the ranch is in a trust or somehow protected from marital division, Carol's case falls apart. She gets nothing. And if there are no papers? He looked at me straight. Then you're fighting a losing battle. Montana law says spouses have claim to marital assets. 32 years of marriage, no prenup. She'll get half. The judge will order the sale. And Vince Hargrove will buy it at auction. The rain ran down Richard's window. March was coming. Then the deadline. Then foreclosure. I stood up. Then we better find that safe deposit box. Richard grabbed his coat. Your grandfather banked where? First Agricultural, same as me. Let's go. We drove through town in the rain. The streets were mud and slush. Winter breaking apart. Spring trying to come early. I thought about my grandfather. 90 years old when he died. Sharp until the end. He'd known something. Planned for something. If he'd protected this ranch, he'd done it quietly. The way men of his generation did everything. No announcements, no explanations, just paperwork filed away and trusted to hold when the storm came. I just had to hope he'd been thorough. The whispers started before the bank meeting even happened. Sunday morning, I skipped church for the first time in 30 years. Couldn't face it. But Pastor Mike showed up at my door that afternoon, rain dripping off his hat brim. Franklin. He stood on the porch, uncertain. Can we talk? I let him in, made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table that still smelled faintly of Carol's candles. Some vanilla scent she'd liked. Mike was 68. We'd known each other since grade school. He'd married Carol and me, baptized Danny, buried my parents. I've been hearing things, he said. Careful, like he was testing ice. Carol's been talking to some of the ladies. Rita, too. What's she saying? He looked at his coffee. That you were controlling, that you kept her isolated out here, that you checked her phone, monitored her spending, made her account for every minute. He paused. That you scared her, Franklin, that she was afraid. The rain drummed on the roof, steady, cold, the kind of rain that soaks through everything. None of that's true, I know, but his voice had doubt in it. Some of the congregation are asking questions. The younger folks don't know you like I do. They hear a woman saying she was afraid. They believe her, and she forged my signature on a $400,000 loan. She's been meeting with a developer for a year. She tried to file a quitclaim deed behind my back. I pushed the folder across the table. Cal's photographs. That's who you're defending. Mike looked through them. His face went gray. Franklin, I'm not defending anyone. I'm just telling you what's being said. You should know. He left without finishing his coffee. By Monday, the whole town knew their version. The feed store clerk wouldn't meet my eyes when I paid for mineral blocks. At the post office, Rita's friend Margaret turned away when I walked in. The hardware store owner, who'd known me 40 years, asked if I was doing okay, in that careful voice people use when they think you might be dangerous. Carol had gotten there first, planted her story, made herself the victim. I drove home through mud. The roads were soft, winter breaking down into spring slush. Every low spot was a puddle. Every field showed patches of dead grass where snow had been. When I pulled up to the house, there was a truck in the driveway. Not Carol's, not Vince's. A blue Ford F-250 with Billings plates, mud-splattered, work truck. Danny got out. I hadn't seen my son in 5 years. Not since the argument after his mother and I had separated the first time. Back when we'd tried counseling, and it hadn't worked. He'd taken her side. Said things. I'd said things back. He was 42 now, heavier than I remembered. Gray threading through his dark hair. Looked like me in the jaw. Looked like his mother around the eyes. We stood 10 feet apart in the rain. Mom called me, he said finally. Told me her version, how you drove her away, how you were cruel. He shifted his weight. Then Cal called, told me his version, said I should come see for myself. Long drive for nothing. Yeah, well. He looked at the barn, the fence line, the land. Figured 5 years was long enough to be stupid. I didn't know what to say to that. Can I come in? We sat at the same table where Pastor Mike had sat. I made more coffee. My hands shook slightly pouring it. Danny noticed, but didn't comment. I showed him everything. The loan papers, the forged signature, Carol's letter from 2019, the photographs of her with Vince, the business card, the survey stakes. He read through it all without speaking. The rain kept falling. Somewhere a gutter was overflowing, water splashing on the ground below. When he finished, he set the papers down gentle. His eyes were wet. I believed her, he said. His voice cracked. 5 years, I believed you were the problem, that you were cold and difficult and impossible to live with. I told you that. Remember, I told you Mom deserved better. You were protecting your mother. I was wrong. He put his head in his hands. Jesus, Dad, 5 years I didn't call. 5 years I wasted believing her lies. And she was planning to rob you the whole time. The coffee had gone cold between us. The kitchen was dim, gray light through windows that needed cleaning. You're here now, I said. He looked up. Cal said you're fighting this. Community meeting at the Grange. 2 weeks. I want to help. He stood up, started pacing, that nervous energy he'd always had, even as a kid. We need documents, right? Proof the ranch isn't joint property. You said Grandpa set something up. Safe deposit box. We went to the bank this morning. Records show a box in his name, but it was closed in 2002. They transferred the contents to a new box under my name. I don't remember doing it. Do you have the key? That's the problem. Danny stopped pacing. Wait, I remember something. His eyes went distant. I was 12, maybe 13. Grandpa took me to the bank, made me witness some papers. He said, Danny's face changed. He said, this ranch stays Porter, no matter what. I remember because it seemed important. He made me swear not to tell Grandma. Said women worry too much about paperwork. My heart was beating faster now. He made you witness trust documents? Maybe. I don't know. But Dad, he said something else. Danny moved toward me. He said, if anything happens, the key's with the tools. Keep the tools safe, and you keep the land. The tools, Grandfather's tools, the tackle box in the attic, the toolbox in the barn, the transit on the shelf. We need to find that key, I said. Danny was already heading for the door. Attic first, that's where you kept his tackle box. We climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Found the box buried under Christmas decorations and old blankets. The smell of mothballs and dust, mouse droppings in the corners. Danny opened it. Fishing lures, rusty hooks, ancient line. And at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, 2 small brass keys. Safe deposit box keys. Danny held one up to the light. First Agricultural Bank, stamped on the head. There's two, I said. He pulled out the second. Same bank, different number. 2 boxes, Danny said. Why would Grandpa have 2 boxes? I took the keys. They were cold, solid, real. Maybe one's the decoy. Maybe both matter. I looked at my son. First time in 5 years we'd been in the same room working toward the same thing. We find out tomorrow. Danny nodded, put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed once, the way men do when words aren't enough. I should have been here sooner, Dad. I'm sorry. You're here now. That's what matters. Outside, the rain was letting up, the clouds breaking apart. Through the attic window, I could see patches of blue. Spring was coming early this year, and we finally had a chance. That night, Danny and I sat in the Cottonwood Diner after closing. Nora had locked the door, but let us in the back. She poured coffee without asking, then slid into the booth across from us. The diner was dark, except for one light over the counter. Outside, the rain had turned to mist. Cold March mist that clung to everything. The smell of old grease and pine cleaner. The hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. We found the keys, Danny said. Dad's going to the bank tomorrow. Nora nodded. She looked tired. 61 years of early mornings and late nights. And then the Grange meeting? Friday, I said. Richard's got it scheduled. She wrapped both hands around her mug. Franklin, I need to tell you something. Carol came in here yesterday, sat right where you're sitting. She cried. Told me you destroyed her life, that you turned the whole town against her, that she was scared. I stared at the coffee. Dark, bitter, too strong from sitting on the burner too long. She's good at that, I said, being the victim. I know. Nora's voice was quiet. I told her I couldn't help her. Told her I'd seen the photos, that I knew about Vince. She called me a traitor and left. She paused. But Franklin, some people believed her. They're saying you're vengeful. That you're trying to humiliate her publicly because you can't stand that she left. Danny leaned forward. She forged his signature. She committed fraud. I know that. You know that. But when you stand up Friday and show those photos, when you present that letter where she planned this for years, you're going to destroy her completely in front of everyone she knows. Nora looked at me. Is that who you want to be? The question sat heavy between us. I thought about Carol, 19 years old when I married her. Pretty and hopeful and full of plans for our life together. Somewhere, along the way, those plans had died. Maybe I'd killed them with silence. Maybe she'd killed them with bitterness. Maybe we'd both just stopped trying. She tried to take everything, I said. The land, my grandfather's legacy. She would have left me with nothing. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve consequences. Nora reached across and touched my hand. I'm saying be careful. Vengeance and justice look similar until you're done. Then one haunts you, and one lets you sleep. Danny shifted beside me. What are you saying? That Dad should just let her walk away? I'm saying he should tell the truth without cruelty. Present the facts. Let people see what happened, but don't enjoy it. Don't make it about hurting her back. She squeezed my hand once and let go. Your grandfather was a good man, Franklin. He wouldn't have wanted you to become hard. We sat in silence. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere water dripped from a loose faucet. I'll do it right, I said finally. No ambush. I'll let her speak first. Let her say her piece, then I'll tell the truth. Nora smiled, sad but real. That's the man I've known 40 years. Morning came cold but clear. Danny and I worked the irrigation gate that had broken during the February freeze. The frame had cracked, metal fatigued by cold. It needed welding. Danny set up the equipment in the barn. He was a custom welder by trade, had his own business in Billings. Good work, precise work, the kind that lasted. I held the metal steady while he worked. The torch hissed blue-white. Sparks cascaded onto the concrete floor, the smell of hot metal and ozone. The barn was cold, but the work area was warm from the forge. We didn't talk much. Men don't always need to. The work said what needed saying. When he finished the first seam, he shut off the torch, lifted his hood, looked at me across the gate. You taught me this, he said. How to fix things. How to make them stronger where they broke. I nodded. I should have remembered that when you and Mom broke. His voice was rough. Instead, I just picked a side and walked away. 5 years, Dad. I can't get those back. You're here now. I wasn't listening before. When you tried to teach me about responsibility, about keeping your word, about doing what's right even when it costs you. He set the torch down. But I heard you anyway, even when I wasn't listening. That's what fathers do. They teach you things that don't land until later. I put my hand on his shoulder, squeezed. The way my father did, the way his father did. You turned out fine, son. He smiled, picked up the torch. Let's finish this gate. We worked another hour. When it was done, the weld was clean, strong. The kind that would hold 50 years, if treated right. Danny was putting away the equipment when he stopped, reached into grandfather's old toolbox on the workbench, the one that had been there since 1889. Original tools, hand-forged hammer, wrenches worn smooth from use. At the bottom, wrapped in a dirty rag, was another brass key. Dad, I came over, looked. Safe deposit box key, First Agricultural Bank, different number from the 2 in the tackle box. 3 keys, Danny said. Why would Grandpa have 3 safe deposit boxes? I took the key, felt the weight of it, the cold brass. Maybe one's the trust documents, maybe one's something else. Maybe all 3 matter. We find out today. I looked at the key, at my son, at the barn that had stood 135 years. Whatever's in those boxes, your grandfather put it there for a reason. He was protecting something. Danny nodded. Then let's go find out what. Outside, the sun was breaking through clouds. First real sun in weeks. The ground was still mud, but you could smell it changing. Spring coming, despite everything. We had 4 days until the Grange meeting, and 3 keys to 3 boxes that might save everything. The Grange Hall was built in 1923, same year as my house. Wood floors that creaked, high windows, smell of old varnish and dust. It held maybe 60 people if you packed them in. 47 showed up Friday night. I got there early with Danny and Richard Chen. We set up a table at the front, laid out the folders, the photographs, the documents. Everything organized and precise. People filed in. Some nodded to me, some didn't. The Paulson brothers, Tom Hendricks, Pastor Mike. Nora McKenzie sat up front, arms crossed. Cal Turner stood in the back, hat in hands. Rita Schmidt came in with her church group. They sat on the left side, Carol's side. Then Carol arrived. She wore black, simple dress, no jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. Mitchell Crane walked beside her, briefcase in hand. Behind them, keeping his distance, Vince Hargrove slipped in and stood near the door. The room went quiet. Cal Turner had been elected moderator. He stood at the front, cleared his throat. The sound echoed off the wood ceiling. We're here for a community mediation. Franklin Porter and Carol Porter, property dispute and divorce proceedings. His voice was steady, formal. Carol, you asked for this meeting. You speak first. She stood, walked to the front. Her heels clicked on the wood floor. She faced the room. I've lived in this town 32 years, she said. Her voice shook. I was 19 when I married Franklin. Thought I was marrying a partner, a companion, someone who'd build a life with me. She paused. Instead, I got silence. I got a man who loved his cattle more than his wife, who spent more time fixing fence than fixing our marriage. Rita nodded. Some of the younger women murmured agreement. I tried. For 32 years, I tried. I asked him to talk to me, to take me places, to see me as something other than the woman who cooked his meals. Her voice rose. He made me feel invisible, trapped out there on that ranch with nothing but wind and cows in his cold shoulder. She was crying now. So yes, I left. Yes, I found someone who actually listened, who saw me as a person, not just unpaid labor. And now Franklin wants to destroy me for it, wants to humiliate me in front of everyone, because that's who he is, cruel, controlling, unable to let go. She sat down. Rita put an arm around her. Mitchell Crane leaned over, whispered something. Cal looked at me. Franklin, I stood, walked to the front. My boots sounded loud on the old floor. Carol's right about some things, I said. I wasn't a good husband. I didn't talk enough, didn't show affection the way she needed. I thought providing was loving. Thought keeping the ranch going was enough. I looked at her. It wasn't, and I'm sorry for that. The room shifted. People leaned forward. But that's not why we're here. I picked up the first folder. Carol didn't just leave because she was lonely. She planned it. For years. And she didn't plan to leave alone. She planned to take the ranch with her. I set down the photographs. One by one. Carol and Vince at the cafe. Carol and Vince at the land office. Carol and Vince at the hotel in Billings. July through October of last year. 6 months of meetings. 6 months of planning. I set down the business card. Hargrove Development. Same company that's been trying to buy this ranch for 30 years. Same company that wants to turn Porterland into condos. Vince shifted near the door. People turned to look at him. In June, Carol forged my signature on a $400,000 loan refinance. 12% interest, due March 31st. She did it while I was at an auction in Miles City. I showed the bank documents. The plan was simple. Let the bank foreclose. Then Vince buys it at auction. Carol gets a payout from Vince's development company. I get nothing. Mitchell Crane stood. This is speculation, and I have her letter. I pulled it out. The envelope dated 2019. She wrote this 4 years ago, planning it, waiting for the right moment. I I read it aloud, every word. The part about Vince's project, the part about taking her half, the part about waiting for me to give her an excuse. The room was silent now. Carol didn't leave because I was cold, I said quietly. She left because she and Vince had a deal. She just needed to wait until the timing was right. Nora Mackenzie stood up. Franklin's telling the truth. I saw them together. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry, Franklin. Cal Turner stood. So did I. I took those photos, followed her for months, kept records. One by one, 7 more people stood. The feed store owner, the bank manager's assistant, Jim Holcomb, each one a witness, each one validating what I'd said. Carol's face went white. She looked at Rita, at Mitchell Crane, at the people who'd sat on her side. None of them met her eyes. This is... Carol's voice cracked. You're making me sound like a criminal. You forged my signature, I said. That's fraud. You tried to file a quitclaim deed without my consent. That's illegal. You conspired with a developer to steal my land. That's elder abuse. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I loved you, Carol. Past tense. But I won't let you erase 3 generations because you wanted a different life. Mitchell Crane was whispering urgently to Carol. She shook her head, stood up like she was leaving. We're not done, Richard Chen said. He stood, walked to the front carrying a leather document folder. Wednesday, Franklin and his son discovered 3 safe deposit boxes registered to Franklin's grandfather, William Porter. The contents are relevant to this proceeding. He opened the folder, drew out yellowed papers, official seals, notary stamps. In 1965, William Porter placed this ranch in an irrevocable family trust. Franklin Porter is the trustee. The land is trust property, not marital property. Under Montana law, trust assets are not subject to division and divorce. The room erupted. Carol stood frozen. Carol Porter has no ownership claim to this ranch, Richard continued. She never did. The marriage doesn't change that. The 32 years don't change that. It's been protected since 1965. When he set down another document. Second box contained correspondence. Letters from Hargrove Development dated 1998, 2005, and 2012. 3 previous attempts to purchase Porter land. All refused. All from the same corporation Vince Hargrove represents. People turned to look at Vince. He was pale now, moving toward the door. Third box contained recent documents, property assessments, development plans, a 10,000-acre project proposal. Porter Ranch sits in the center. The creek that runs through Franklin's land has 1889 water rights. Without those rights, the entire development collapses. Richard looked at Vince. You weren't romancing Carol for love. You were romancing her for water rights. Vince pushed through the door, left. Carol sat down hard. Her lawyer was packing his briefcase. Already leaving. Cal Turner cleared his throat. I move. We notify the Montana Attorney General. Elder fraud investigation, financial exploitation of seniors. Second, Nora said. All in favor? 43 hands went up. Only Rita and 3 others abstained. Carol looked at me across the room. Her face was destroyed. Everything she'd planned, everything she'd worked for, gone. You always were stubborn, she whispered. Then she ran, out the door, into the spring night. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then people started talking. Some came up to shake my hand. Some just nodded and left. Danny put his arm around my shoulders. You did good, Dad. But I didn't feel good. I felt tired and sad and old. I'd won, but it felt like losing anyway. The week after the Grange meeting, things moved fast. Monday, the Montana Attorney General's office opened an investigation into Vince Hargrove and Hargrove Development, LLC. Turns out they'd been operating the same scheme across 5 counties, targeting elderly landowners, romancing wives, creating financial pressure, then buying at foreclosure auctions. Porter Ranch would have been their biggest acquisition. Tuesday, First Agricultural Bank voided the fraudulent loan. The bank manager called personally to apologize, said they should have caught the forged signature earlier, said they'd tighten their procedures. The $400,000 debt disappeared like it had never existed. Wednesday, Mitchell Crane withdrew as Carol's attorney. Professional courtesy, he called it, which meant he didn't want his name attached to fraud charges. Thursday, Carol moved in with Rita. The house they'd grown up in, small and cramped on the edge of town. Rita didn't look happy about it. But blood is blood, even when blood disappoints you. Friday, Vince Hargrove left Montana. Someone saw him loading boxes into his Lexus at 2 a.m. By morning, his office in Billings was empty. Lease terminated, phone disconnected. The state AG issued a warrant, but he was gone. Probably back east somewhere, changing his name, looking for the next scheme. The following Monday, Richard Chen filed the divorce papers. Uncontested now, no marital assets to divide. Carol got her car, her personal belongings, her 401k from the bookkeeping job she'd quit in 2018. Nothing from the ranch, nothing from me, no alimony. She'd committed fraud. In Montana, that voids spousal support. The judge signed it on March 20th. 32 years of marriage reduced to 3 pages and a stamp. I saw Carol once more before she left. It was at the post office. She was mailing boxes, small ones. Her life condensed to things that fit in cardboard. We stood 10 feet apart. The post office smelled like packing tape and the clerk's coffee. Outside, rain was falling soft. That gentle spring rain that soaks in instead of running off. "Rita's kicking me out," she said. Not to me exactly, just saying it to the air between us. Her church friends won't let it go. She says I'm making her life difficult. I didn't answer. "I'm moving to Portland. My cousin has a spare room. She doesn't know about—" Carol stopped. "She doesn't know." And the clerk was pretending not to listen, doing a bad job of it. "I'm sorry," Carol said finally, quietly. "Not for leaving. I needed to leave. But for how I did it. For the lying. For Vince." She looked at me then. Really looked. "I wanted to hurt you. Wanted you to feel as small as I felt all those years. That was wrong." Yes, what I said. It was. She nodded, picked up her receipt, walked to the door, stopped with her hand on it. "You'll die out there, on that land, alone. Was it worth it?" "I won't be alone." She left. I never saw her again. April came warm. The snow was gone completely by the first week. The pastures turned from brown to green almost overnight. That fast spring growth, when everything decides to live at once. The creek ran high with snowmelt. The meadowlarks came back, singing from fence posts at dawn. Danny stayed. Not permanently. He had his business in Billings. But he drove out every weekend, sometimes stayed the whole week. We worked the ranch together, fixed what winter had broken, prepared for calving season, talked more in those weeks than we had in the previous 5 years. On April 15th, he brought someone with him. A boy climbed out of the truck. 13, maybe 14. Thin and awkward the way boys are at that age. Dark hair, Danny's jaw, Carol's eyes. "Dad, this is Michael, your grandson." I'd known Danny had a son. He'd mentioned it once during the bad years, before we stopped talking, but I'd never met him, never been invited to. Michael stood by the truck, uncertain, hands in his pockets. I walked over, extended my hand. "Michael." He shook. His grip was soft, city grip, but he looked me in the eye. "Grandpa." The word hit different than I expected. "You know how to string fence wire?" I asked. He shook his head. "Good," I said. "Well, a man should learn something new every spring." We worked the south fence line that afternoon. 3 generations of portermen. The work was simple. Replace rotten posts, restring wire, check for weak spots where cattle might push through. I showed Michael how to dig a post hole, how to tamp the dirt so it would hold 50 years, how to pull wire taut without breaking it. Danny welded the corner braces. The torch hissed blue. Sparks fell on new grass. The smell of hot metal and spring earth and the particular scent of growing things. Michael was quiet, watched everything, asked good questions. "Why do you set them this deep?" "How do you know if the wire's tight enough?" "What happens if cattle break through?" I answered each one, showed him instead of telling when I could. Let him try and fail and try again until he got it right. Around noon, we sat on the tailgate of Danny's truck, ate sandwiches Danny had brought, drank cold water from a thermos. The sun was warm, real warm. The first warm day that felt like summer might actually come. Michael pointed to a hawk riding thermals over the ridge. "Is this place really ours?" "Been Porterland since 1889, I said. "Your great-great-grandfather built that barn you see there. Your grandfather," I nodded to Danny, "helped me build the new section when he was about your age." Michael studied the barn, the house, the fields running green to the horizon. "Someday it'll be yours," I said, "if you want it, if you're willing to care for it." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want it." I smiled. First real smile in months. "Then I'll teach you." Danny looked at his boots. His eyes were wet. He cleared his throat. "Dad, I was thinking, maybe Michael could spend summers here. Learn the ranch, if that's okay." More than okay. We got back to work. By evening, a quarter-mile of new fence stood straight and strong. Michael's hands were blistered. He didn't complain, just wrapped them in his shirt and kept working. When we finished, I ran my hand along the top wire, testing the tension. It would hold. Some things do. We were loading tools when I saw the car, silver sedan, Carol's car, driving slow on the county road. It stopped at the gate. Just stopped. Engine running. Through the windshield, I could see her face. She was crying, just sitting there watching us, watching the 3 of us on the tailgate, watching the life she'd left behind. Michael noticed. "Who's that?" Danny put his hand on his son's shoulder. "Nobody important." Carol sat there another minute, then drove on, headed west, toward Portland and whatever life she'd build from the wreckage of this one. "Was that Grandma?" Michael asked. I watched the dust settle where her car had been. That was the past, I said. We're working on the future. That night, after Danny and Michael left, I sat on the porch with coffee. The daffodils I'd planted on my parents' graves were blooming, yellow and bright against gray stone. The air smelled like turned earth and new grass and possibility. The meadowlarks were singing their evening song. The creek was running full. In the pasture, new calves followed their mothers, learning the rhythms of the herd. My grandfather's transit sat on the table beside me, brass catching the last light. Danny wanted to teach Michael to use it, pass it down, keep the precision. I thought about Carol, about 32 years of marriage that ended in a Grange Hall, with photographs and legal documents. About love that curdled into resentment so slowly neither of us noticed until it was too late. Maybe I should have talked more. Maybe she should have been honest sooner. Maybe we were both just people who wanted different things and didn't know how to say it until the saying destroyed everything. But sitting there in the warm April evening, watching my land turn green, knowing my son and grandson would work it after me, I couldn't bring myself to regret the choice I'd made. Some men chase happiness, some men hold their ground. I'd held mine. The next Saturday, Michael came back. He brought gloves this time. Work gloves that were too big for him, but he'd grown into eventually. We worked the irrigation gate Danny had welded, checked the flow, made adjustments. Michael's hands were still blistered from last week, but he didn't mention it. While we worked, he asked, "Grandpa, what do I do if someone tries to take this place when it's mine?" I set down my wrench, looked at him, 13 years old and already thinking about threats that might not come for 50 years. That was good. That meant he understood. You hold fast, when I said. You don't give ground. You don't surrender what 3 generations built just because someone wants it. You protect it. You pass it on. He nodded, serious. Like you did. Like I did. Danny came over then. The 3 of us stood there by the irrigation gate with water running clear and cold from the creek. 3 generations, 1 land, 135 years of porter ground. That would stretch to 160, 180, 200, if we did our jobs right. The sun was warm on our backs. The meadowlarks sang. Somewhere a calf was bawling for its mother. The sounds of a ranch that would outlast all of us. "Come on," I said. "Let's check the new calves." We walked together toward the barn, Michael between us, learning, watching, becoming the next man who'd hold this land when I was dust. Some battles you win with noise. This one I'd won with receipts and trust documents and my grandfather's warning from 1965. But the real victory wasn't in the winning. It was in the staying. In the morning coffee, and the fence posts, and the grandson who'd remember these days long after I was gone. The land remembers who loved it and who tried to sell it. And now 3 generations would remember that some things, the right things, you hold fast. No matter what it costs. 3 weeks later, I sat on the porch at dawn with my coffee. The rain gauge showed 2 inches from last night's storm. Good for the seedlings. Good for the hay that would feed next winter's herd. The meadowlarks were in full voice now. That sound you wait for all winter. The sound that says, the hard part's over, life's coming back. You made it through. I opened my mother's field notebook, the one she'd kept for 40 years before the cancer took her. Wrote the date, wrote the weather, wrote the first report of growth in the Northeast 40, continuing her work, keeping the record that would outlast us all. The daffodils on her grave were blooming, yellow and bright against the gray stone. Someone had left fresh flowers too, Danny, probably. Or maybe Michael. The boy had come out twice more since that first weekend, was already talking about summer, about learning to run the baler, about whether he could bring friends to help with haying. The divorce was final now. Papers filed and stamped and stored in the same drawer as the trust documents. Carol was in Portland. Rita said she'd found work at a bookstore, said she was doing okay. I didn't ask for details. Vince Hargrove was still missing. The AG's investigation had expanded to 7 counties. Turned out he'd been running this scheme for 12 years. Other families weren't as lucky as mine. Didn't have grandfathers who'd thought ahead. Didn't have trust documents from 1965. I'd gotten lucky. Or maybe not lucky. Maybe just stubborn enough to hold on while everyone told me to let go. The sun cleared the tree line, warm on the porch boards. The fields stretched green all the way to the horizon. Spring had come fast this year. Early thaw, early growth, the kind of spring that makes you believe in fresh starts. My grandfather's transit sat on the table beside me, brass catching the light. Michael wanted to learn to use it. Said maybe he'd be a surveyor someday, or an engineer, or maybe just a rancher who knew how to measure things right. I told him any of those would be fine, as long as he remembered where he came from, as long as he understood that some things, land, family, your word, those things you don't sell, those things you hold. Carol thought I was choosing dirt over love. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was choosing something bigger than both. Choosing continuity. Choosing to be the link between what came before and what comes after. They thought silence was surrender. Turned out it was just preparation. The coffee had gone cold, but I finished it anyway. Stood up, stretched. My back ached. My knees complained. 67 years shows itself in the morning. But the land didn't care how old I was. The cattle needed feeding, the fence needed checking, the irrigation needed monitoring. Work that my grandfather did, and my father did, and I'd do until I couldn't. Then Danny would do it, then Michael. That's what legacy means. Not what you take, what you leave. I walked down the porch steps. The dog, Cal's old border collie that he'd given me last week, followed at my heels. The morning was warm. The meadowlarks were singing. The creek was running full. Some battles you win with noise. This one I won with patience and paperwork and the quiet knowledge that some things are worth fighting for. But the real victory wasn't in the courthouse or the Grange Hall or the moment Carol drove away for the last time. The real victory was right here, right now. Coffee and sunrise, and work that would outlast us all. The land remembers who loved it, and I'd made sure it would remember the Porters for at least one more generation. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything.